Okay, Richard, I guess we can chat among ourselves. Our technical department, otherwise known as Stef, is wrestling with the YouTube knobs and switches and sliders and buttons and checkboxes.
In
And he's going to,
fairness, it's the first time we've ever
it
tried
is,
this.
and he's going to give us a tip as a wink when we can start for real. But
Absolutely.
it was always going to be a bit like this, and this is why we needed to rehearse it before next Friday when we do this again for real.
Well, I'm
So,
doing it for real on Thursday. I don't know about you. It's entirely up to you. But
okay. I did that on purpose to make sure you were paying
okay,
to make sure you were paying attention.
I am paying attention.
But
Yeah,
hopefully we'll get the tip the wink from, or get
yeah.
Steph will tip us a wink in a moment, and we can chat for real
Meantime,
about
I
the
shall have a
budget.
I shall have a
Yeah,
little sip for my green signals milk.
I know, which I still haven't got. You still got to send me one for
No,
the one.
you had one, but you
I know,
broke
and
it. Right. Yeah.
it slid off my tray onto me Victorian tiles in Thal.
Oh, check you out, eh?
They were harder than mug.
Well, tiles usually are. Tiles and mug and tiles usually win, don't they?
They are amazing, those Victorian quarry tile things.
Is it? I don't know. I'm looking at your picture there, and it's quite.
Okay.
It looks like quite a nice day. It's just gone really dark here.
It's not actually.
Oh, isn't it?
It's grey and grim and miserly and that wonderful Scots word "dree."
Right.
But the great thing about this office of mine is that sort of desert sandy coloured walls and that lovely wood gives a nice ambience, whatever the light outside.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've got the tip the wink from Steph that we're ready to rock and roll, Richard. Shall we give it a go? In the hope
Go
that
for it.
somebody's listening. There's a bit of an echo come on the line as well, so maybe that tells us something. Okay, welcome to a very special edition of Green Signals, and I do hope that there's hordes of you out there listening. There's me, as usual, in Lincolnshire, and as per usual, my chum and colleague.
Richard Bowker down here in Wiltshire.
Okie dokie. Well, the whole purpose of today. So first of all, it's a members only broadcast, and we're doing it as a trial because next Thursday we're doing a full show in this way, or we're hoping to. So this is to try out the technology, and this is going only to members. So two things. First of all, thank you for being a member. We love having you along, and there's an increasing number of you there. And thanks for joining us this afternoon. You can doubtless let us know what you think of it earlier. Think of it later. I've invented a time machine as well, Richard. So,
Well, can I just say one thing before because you just mentioned that I'm just looking at where people are. We've got somebody here who is at Crewe Heritage Centre. We've got somebody here live is actually joined us from Australia. We've got Trevor, who is in Placitas in Cuba.
oh, that's Trev. What's his name? Our regular man.
Indeed so. So Trevor Stone. So yeah,
Stone, that's it. Yes.
all over the world. We're live to the world.
Welcome.
Anyway, sorry about that.
Welcome, Trev. It's good that you'd broken off grising if any steam in Cuba, if that's what you're doing. To join us, you're always welcome. Right? Shall we kick up? Shall we lurch in? It's a bit like a loose couple train getting into motion, is this, isn't it, Richard? With a lot of snatching of couplings until the whole thing's on the go. But we're here to talk about the budget. And I've been sat downstairs getting as depressed doubtly as you have. So it seems to me there's two aspects that we could do with talking about. One is the general impression of the budget as a whole, and two, anything relevance to the railway. And it would seem the second part of that discussion is going to be quite a short one. In terms of the budget as a whole, the wonderful Ed Conway, who does all the number crunching on Sky News, and he is very much worth listening to. If you want to catch up on Sky News after you've seen us talk about the budget, I'm sure he'll be running some of his fantastic charts and graphs again. And a couple of things he's just said, which, if I've interpreted them properly, struck me that we are now have got the biggest overall tax burden since 1948. And it's significantly higher than even it was then just after the war. And it's the biggest tax-raising single budget since 1993, when it was post Black Wednesday, Norman Lamont crashing out of the ERM, and all that. And I also heard it suggested that it's the biggest tax-raising budget ever, 40-odd billion pounds. So that sets the general tenor of the budget, and I'm sure Richard will give us his view as well. doubtless tell me I've got some of those things wrong. But about the railway, don't look like that. Because as we said before, we're doing this without the aid of a safety net. As far as railways go, the only bit that I noticed in the long speech was that we seem to have got confirmation about Euston in respect of funding for the tunnelling, and then some wishy-washy stuff about smoke and mirrors about that catalysing the private sector. And I took that to translate as we'll pay to build the tunnels, but the private sector have to build the station. And then the rest of it, I heard about Wigan and Bolton and TRU, and it all seemed to me like the usual business of re-announcing things that's already been announced. I'm not sure how serious we're supposed to take the West Yorkshire Metro Bradford Leeds tramway, but I think we've had that announced quite a few times since Alistair Darling canned it all those years ago. So they were my initial impressions, Richard. I know that your super brain will have wrapped itself around the numbers and you'll have lots to tell us. So go.
Well, it was a long budget speech.
Yeah.
So it was about an hour and 15. It was quite a while before anything meaty was said about numbers. It was I felt it was quite political in terms of its overall
language,
sort of rhetoric and language. I mean, it's, every now and then there's a pivot point, isn't there? The way that we do things, the way we think about things changes materially. I think obviously in recent memory, Blair's government did that in 97. The austerity, George Osborne's first austerity budget did that. This one's done it again. It's a pivot point.
Not incremental.
No, clearly it's a Labour budget. I know that's an obvious point, but it's a Labour budget. And there's some stuff in it, and she spent quite a long time. We should, nod to the fact this is the first budget delivered by a female Chancellor. That is brilliant. And
that's good news.
Marks a big change. And I thought for a big set piece, overall, I thought she presented it very well.
She did.
Let's just say that. Because it's not easy, particularly when you've got everybody shouting and screaming.
I know.
As she was. That's me forgetting to turn my email off, by the way. So in terms of the kind of messaging, it was very Labour. And what did she have to do? She said, I've inherited this massive black hole. Cue lots of jeering from the other side. But I've inherited this massive black hole and I've got to restore fiscal stability. And I'm going to do that by raising tax so that I can A, create fiscal stability, and B, give us a headroom to invest. And she actually said right at the beginning, invest. And I thought, that's set the tone quite nicely. We then got a lot of stuff around things like looking at economic growth and looking at, then we got onto the sort of taxation stuff fairly quickly. I think now the taxation stuff, you're going to be able to all read this on loads and loads of business commentary, so I won't bore you with it, but clearly there was a lot of what's already been trailed came to pass. Right? No question about that. Businesses bearing the brunt of this, a big increase in employers' national insurance contributions from 13.8 to 15%, capital gains tax going up, probably not the hit on things like business asset disposal relief and things like that we maybe feared, corporation tax staying at 25% for the life of the parliament. So, there were some good things, but the employers' national insurance is quite a big thing. Not only has it gone up to 15%, but you start paying it at 5,000, not
9,
not 9, and the relief goes up to 10,500. But I think small businesses will go, wow, we're paying a lot more. So it'd be really interesting to see that the business confidence, which Labour put a lot of effort into before the election, kind of survives to the same level after this budget. We then got on to sort of the capital plans. Now, it's really important, this bit, because she was very clear. We're carrying out a spending review. We're doing a 1-year spending review, and it will really be the spring of next year before we see what that actually means. So I was never expecting, Nigel, to see a huge amount of detail about capital. But we did hear about more capital going into education. We heard more capital going into health. We also heard about a £22 billion increase in the day-to-day running costs of the NHS. So that, I mean, they were arguing for more, but that's not capital. A lot of capital going into other areas, very little capital going into transport. And in some respects, that's kind of not surprising because it ever was thus.
It's what we expected, wasn't it? But your national insurance point and that NHS thing, if I heard it correctly, the national insurance changes will raise £25 billion.
Yeah, so it's a huge part of that total gap, if you like. But in terms of transport, it's as you said. The only thing that I can see that is new and welcome, let's be honest, is tunnelling to Euston. Now,
Two cheers for that, for sure.
Yeah, the tunnel boring machines are there.
They're already in the holes, aren't they?
They're ready to. Well, they're kind of ready to start the holes.
Yeah.
So that's good. I didn't quite read Euston the same way you perhaps did. I don't think they said, and now it's going to be all funded by the private sector. They talked about
catalysing the private sector.
I don't think they said any. I just don't think they said anything really about the Euston station. Really, the only thing that was clear was we are going to tunnel to Euston,
which is great news. Let's just be absolutely clear about that.
But nothing on Phase 2A or HS2 Light, Midlands North West Rail Link.
But surely that might come into your spending review thing anyway.
Yeah,
so we shouldn't write it off yet.
Oh no! I completely agree with that. But there was nothing. If you were looking for an unlocking of rail capital investment, then you will be disappointed by this because there was nothing in her announcement. I mean, Wigan to Bolton electrification, I think it's virtually done, right? There are electric trains. The wires are up to Staley Bridge. So East West Rail are running test trains to on the first section. Although she did say East West Rail committed to go to Cambridge.
I noticed that as well.
Quite interesting. But it'll be a long, long way out. So nothing really exciting on the mega project basis. However, quite a bit in terms of devolution. Devolution is going to be a big feature of the next 5 years anyway. So quite a lot there. And you mentioned about West Midland. West Yorkshire light rail. Been talked about many times. I think it's crazy. It's the biggest city in Western Europe with that light rail system. Leeds, 800,000 people, whatever it is. So that needs to come in due course. But this budget, I'm afraid, from a transport point of view, pretty light on detail, except fuel duty is going to be frozen because we don't want to put anything, we're not going to put any extra cost on the price of a petrol at the pump or whatever the alliteration was.
However, rail fares will still go up by 4.6% next April.
Yeah. So and the other one that I'm really unhappy about is the bus fare cap, because the one thing that's probably done more to energise bus use in the last sort of 4 or 5 years is the bus fare cap. And yes, I know they made a political crack about, it would have ended at December. Well, who knows, right? If a Conservative government, they might have continued with it. But it's going to now be extended for a year, but at £3. Don't forget, that's a single bus fare. Most people tend to come back from where they've gone. So really, in reality, it's gone from £4 to £6. And I wonder whether that has an impact in urban versus rural. I'm not sure. The Campaign for Better Transport put some quite good stuff out about this actually over the last few days and others. So I think that's a bit of a shame because bus use has had a big boost and I think this will affect it.
Isn't it ironic as well that bus use had a great boost and people understood and it made a lot of headlines because what they did was simplify and make easy to understand a cheap, affordable fare structure. Now there's a radical idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know it's all a bit. I think it's just all a bit of a disappointment, really. Particularly given the fact that other areas were told we're going to be big capital investments.
No mention of GBR, but there was mention of GBE in Aberdeen.
Yeah. It was. Look, those of listening and us will know that rail never features particularly strongly in budgets.
Or elections generally, does it?
It never has. And I don't think this one's changed the tone of that. But yeah, we're grateful for Euston because that would have just been crazy.
I mean, if you look in the supporting literature, there's some fluff, isn't there? The government will improve the performance and reliability of rail services, ensuring the rail sector can operate effectively and become financially sustainable, whatever that
Yeah.
means, blah, blah. Secretary of State's plans for reform will look at changes to fares, service and workforce practices. There's an interesting one.
Yeah.
To deliver a modern railway, all this sort of stuff, while boosting ridership and revenue and improving performance, laying the groundwork for the transition to Great British Railways.
Yeah.
One of my contacts has been in touch to say, sounds like no more money, just do better with what you've got.
Well, the one thing that has again been trailed and has happened is the change to the so-called fiscal rules, the investment rule that will allow more borrowing for capital and to stay within the self-imposed fiscal rules for investment. The trick now is for the Transport Department to lobby and put its plans forward very effectively to the Treasury as part of this spending
Which
review.
they should do anyway, make a compelling
Which they should
case.
do anyway, to get access to some of that. So the fiscal rule change was expected, and it's happened in terms of capital. But now the challenge is to work hard to get a fair and appropriate share of that pot.
A penny a pint off beer, Richard?
Right. Great, fantastic. I mean, no, it's really good, isn't it? But overall, the message of this budget will be tax increases, and where the capital gets spent on is going to be fundamentally part of a spending review that's ongoing.
I mean, in terms of the railway stuff, it is disappointing. I can't say I was surprised. Exactly what I was expecting. I mean, and I am very grateful for Euston, because at least we can put that one to bed. But the overall, in terms of the overall feel of the thing, before the election, you could be forgiven that it was almost, well, nothing to see here, move on, no big tax increases, more of the same, bit of an incremental change, and it's anything but that, isn't it? Now they're in power, anything but.
Well, I don't know.
These are big numbers.
They are big numbers. I'm just looking through some of the comments that we've had from members on YouTube, which kind of reflect some of this. Will HS2 go to the north? Well, there's been nothing on that. You know, we have to wait and see on that. Chris said, I wasn't really sure where all the increases in tax came from. I mean, the answer is lots and lots of places. But employers' national insurance is probably the biggest one by volume. Some changes to capital gains, obviously, some changes. Oh, there was one nice thing. If you just shows you can't believe everything you read in the media, because I think we all expected income tax thresholds to be frozen for another 2 years, and she hasn't done that.
No, that's right.
And so that's that's a good one.
But again, I get the sense that that's more an ideological and political dig at the Conservatives than anything else. Yeah. But it's no less welcome for that.
No. Neil said, sadly, not a peep about north of Handsacre Junction. No, true. But doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means it didn't get covered in this. What else have we got here? Our friends from the Independent Brig Line Rail Group were still battling with the train operator trying to get advanced fares on parts of the Brig Line. Better for passengers to pay something than not to travel on the train at all. Totally agree. I mean, there's issues here. Budget's never about the day-to-day, in fairness. It's about setting the big direction.
Neil says, sadly, not a peep about north of Handsacre Junction.
Absolutely, yeah.
And somebody says, you're spot on, Richard, about something. Makes you laugh. Government preach about being green and using public transport, then they go and increase the fare to £3 on the buses.
Well, that's the bus fare thing, isn't it? And I just think I think that is a shame. But again, probably not unexpected. So there we are. That's the budget for 2024. We'll be picking the bones over this. The spending review will be absolutely critical. I imagine most of the newspapers tomorrow will be talking about tax.
Hey ho! And I suppose we better wind up on that then, hadn't we?
Indeed.
Well, look, thanks ever so much to everybody out there for listening. Sorry about the change around of technology at the start. It had Stef dancing around in the producer's office quite a bit, pressing buttons and fiddling with sliders and saying things like, I think you're live now, which was very helpful, wasn't it, Richard?
Well, I can just say, we can see Stef, because Steph's got a camera on, so as producer we can see her, and she does look as if she's aged a little bit in the
Well,
last half an hour.
Throughout our discussion, it was, I'm not sure whether it was entertaining or distracting. Out the corner eye, you could see went and fiddling with stuff. But
Great
she
stuff.
kept commendably quiet rather than distracting us, though she can actually talk
Yeah.
back to us. But look, thanks ever so much for being members. Thanks for joining us. It's been a bit of a rough and ready experiment. I hope you found some value out of it. There's one or two Norfolk said, say something, Nigel. I thought I had said a few. Or maybe it's an oblique way of saying you wouldn't shut up, Richard. I don't know. But Max said, hello, gentlemen, you are now live. I'm just looking down the... This is quite fun, actually. It reminds me of doing the webinars and things.
Yeah.
Is this members only, asked Adam. Yes.
Right, stop it now.
Right, okay, I'm into it now, you see. If you want to see us do this again, hopefully a little bit more professionally on a wider scale, Stef, having mastered the technology, we'll be doing it on Thursday from the RIA conference, the Rail Industries Association conference, first thing in the morning on Thursday, when we'll be chatting to Chris Green, won't we, Richard?
9:45 live on YouTube in conference with Chris Green. That's going to be an absolute cracker.
So please tune in for that. Tell all your friends, and we'll try and get it a little bit more smoothly executed than this. But for now, thank you for being with us. It's goodbye from me, and
And it's goodbye from me.